Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. In today's episode, going through Billy Gilmour's impressive man of the match performance against Krasnodar and why he is the future of Chelsea's midfield. Also, the Champions League round of 16 draw on Monday, who could Chelsea face? And finally, asking the question, do Chelsea have the strongest squad in the Premier League? But before we get into any of that good stuff, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also hit the like button if you're enjoying the content because it helps out the channel as well. Let's start off with Billy Gilmour, who really impressed against Krasnodar on Tuesday in what was a pretty dull game. I think he was the most memorable part of it, alongside another young player in Tino Anjorin who impressed. But looking at Gilmour, after returning from injury, great to see him back in the first team picture. I always reference this, but those two performances last season back in March against Liverpool and Everton were so mature. They were just standout performances, weren't they? And you could see a glimpse of the potential of Billy Gilmour, what he could turn into in Chelsea's midfield in the future. And looking at the future of Chelsea's midfield, of course, currently N'Golo Kante back to his best form and fitness, which is great to see. We don't know how long he'll be at that form and fitness, basically, and how long he'll still be at Chelsea. Hopefully for a couple more years. But looking beyond that, who could fill that role potentially? Of course, a lot can change in Chelsea in terms of manager, in terms of formation system. But what I love about Billy Gilmour already is I can see him being a key component of Chelsea's future midfield. We've talked about Declan Rice potentially, and that could still happen in the future. What I like about the potential and the prospect of Billy Gilmour is him, and this is a massive statement, I know, for such a young player, and I don't want to heap pressure on his shoulders, but sort of a hybrid between a, say, Jorginho type player and an N'Golo Kante type player, right? And I know that's a massive statement. What I love about Billy Gilmour is he could be that Regista metronome type player from deep in midfield for Chelsea. A great passer, has vision, can dictate tempo and play in the centre of midfield from the heart, basically the engine room, but also has the mobility to intercept, to have that dogged nature, that aggressive nature, to tackle, to win the ball back in key areas. And that's what I love about Gilmour, and that's what we've seen so far in the best elements of his game. And I think that hopefully he grows into that player. It was interesting as well seeing Gilmour on a more advanced role rather than a deeper role he played back in March, where Jorginho was playing the other night, and sort of seeing Jorginho's future being questioned recently. I can't expect Jorginho to be at Chelsea, I think, this time next year. I think he'll probably have left the club either in January or in the summer, so that's a chance for Gilmour to break into the team even more. But then you do question as well Gilmour. Apparently, you know, the club obviously rates him very highly, and Lampard rates him very highly too, but you do think, you know, it's getting to that sort of age where the likes of Mason, Tammy, Reece went on loan and really benefited from it. You do think, can Gilmour just be a rotational player? It is getting to that age now where you think either he's going to break into the first team and he's going to be a guaranteed first team player from a very early age, or he needs to go out on loan and get minutes there, either for another Premier League side or go down to the Championship potentially. I think he is probably good enough for a Premier League side, but that's going to be the intriguing thing as well. I think maybe not in January, because apparently the club doesn't want to let him go out on loan, and I can understand that based on the hectic nature of this season, wanting a big squad. But beyond that, I think maybe a loan could be beneficial for him, even if, you know, Chelsea, especially if we go out and sign Declan Rice in the summer, I absolutely think Billy Gilmour should probably get a loan for next season. Let me know your opinions on Gilmour, because I'm really intrigued to hear them in terms of the future of Chelsea's midfield, rotation with Kante at least for this season as that lone DM, and also potential of being sort of a hybrid of the passing of Jorginho and the mobility and intercepting of Kante. Let me know, am I being ridiculous by saying that, or do you see that within his game in the future? Let me know in the comments below. Now moving on to the round of 16 draw in the Champions League. Last night confirmed who Chelsea could face after the final round of Champions League group games. Let's go through the list of teams and who we could face in this draw. It's quite interesting. Some teams I'm sure we want to avoid. So firstly, RB Leipzig, last season semi-finalist, of course knocking out basically Man United the other night after beating them. Incredibly impressive team and coaching Julian Nagelsmann, of course, reaching the semi-final last year. And also, if we do draw Leipzig, narratively, of course, reunion with Timo Werner against his old club. Next, Barcelona, old foes in the Champions League. Historically, a massive tie as well between Chelsea and Barcelona. So many great ties. You always look towards the threat of Lionel Messi, incredible talent, and you don't want to come up against him because he really did hurt Chelsea last time after not scoring against us for quite a few occasions before. But as well, looking at Barca this year, really struggling domestically in La Liga, so potentially maybe not the threat they once were. I think you still want to avoid a team like Barcelona, especially with their experience in knockout ties. Lazio and Atalanta, especially Atalanta, impressive last season, getting to the quarterfinal and just just knocked out Ajax, of course, in their group. So I think they're an interesting team and can be a threat. Porto, Gladbach are a team with Marco Reus that I'd love to face personally. I just love watching Gladbach play, and I think that's a decent draw for Chelsea. And finally, I think the team you most want to avoid in this draw is Atletico Madrid. I think Atletico are the one team with Diego Simeone, have so much sort of intelligence and experience in knockout ties. We saw this last year against Liverpool, what Diego Simeone can do with that side. They have some very interesting players, Joao Felix, Luis Suarez. But apart from that, I just think the intelligence and the rugged nature of that team to get through ties over and over again and go deep in the Champions League, I think they're one team I probably wouldn't want to face. I mean, they're not an attack-minded side. They are a bit like a Jose Mourinho type side that we faced a couple of weeks ago, but I just think the experience and intelligence of this team, I think they're one team you will want to avoid in this draw. I think when I look at this draw, I'm looking at the likes of Lazio, even Atalanta. I know they are quite an exciting side and they did cause a surprise last year, but when they did come up against really good teams, they did eventually get knocked out by PSG in the Champions League last year, and they are a bit more progressive, so I think they could leave space in behind. Porto and Gladbach, I think especially more Porto. I mean, that's a bit of a throwback for me for facing Porto in the Champions League. We faced them many times against Jose Mourinho, so that'd be an interesting tie. So in terms of last year, you're not facing anyone of the caliber of Bayern Munich. Chelsea will avoid Bayern Munich this year, which is great. And especially on top of that, Chelsea having the second leg at home is, I think, a big thing now, especially if fans are going to be in the ground this time. I think that could definitely benefit Chelsea going away first. So Chelsea have a decent chance of getting a decent draw this time round. And I think it's massive for Chelsea to get past the round of 16 this year. I think it'd be improvement. We haven't won a Champions League knockout tie since 2014 with Demba Ba's late winner against PSG in the quarterfinal. That's how long it's been for Chelsea. And I think this year, to mark real improvement, getting to the quarterfinal over two legs, I think would be massive for this group of players. Once you get to the quarterfinal, you never know what's going to happen. We could get a decent draw. We could do something amazing this year and maybe go further than we expect. But I think getting to the quarterfinal is a massive thing for Lampard's team. Let me know your opinions on this draw. Who do you want to get? Who do you want to avoid? Let me know in the comments below. And finally, I want to reference this article from Simon Johnson in The Athletic, where he asked the question, do Chelsea really have the strongest squad in the Premier League? Definitely go and read this, link in the description box below for his full opinions on it. And I sort of agree with him because I still want to keep perspective. I still want to keep restraining. And of course, a lot of this sort of links into Chelsea's Premier League title challenge, basically. And can Chelsea win the Premier League this season ahead of the likes of Liverpool and Man City? And of course, there's a lot of optimism around that with Chelsea's strong form at the moment and improvement in a lot of key areas from last season. But in terms of the squad, I think Chelsea have a big squad this year and a very impressive squad. And I think Frank Lampard deserves credit so far for the way he's managed his squad, especially in recent weeks, working with the Champions League games as well. The way Chelsea have basically breezed through their Champions League route without much struggle, basically, and being able to go to Krasnodar, that final game, and even last week against Sevilla, and Chelsea being able to rotate so heavily and still stay undefeated, get such a convincing win against Sevilla last week, I think is a good place to be in as we go into the hectic Christmas period. I do think in terms of strength of options off the bench, Chelsea have one of the best definitely benches in the Premier League. Absolutely. The options Frank Lampard has that he can rotate, that sometimes even a Kai Havertz could be on that bench. Olivier Giroud recently, a great option off the bench, now probably is going to be more of a starter for Lampard based on his recent form. Christian Pulisic, Callum Hudson-Odoi, sometimes you'll see Hakim Ziyech on that bench as well. It really is impressive. I think the thing for me is, and the concern is injuries to key areas, right? And that's the thing when you look at a squad, say, and having a big squad has never been more beneficial in this season. I don't buy, Gary Neville recently saying it's not that different of a season to any other. I completely disagree. This is a very congested season. And my concern has always been fatigue and fitness as we get to the latter part of the season, especially once we get to March, April, May time, with so many games being played in a short, condensed period of time. What effect is that going to have, especially if Chelsea go deep in the Champions League and FA Cup? Frank will have to rotate well again, and so far he's doing that. I just want to keep in mind and bear in mind when we talk about the strongest squad, right, or the best squad. I mean, listen, right, I can sit here as a Chelsea fan and say we have the best squad in the Premier League. Of course I'm going to say that, right, compared to other teams. I think that's a bit of a non-point. I think obviously fans are going to say that, especially for top teams, their own team are the strongest. But in terms of looking at the quality drop, that's my biggest concern when we look at goalkeeper, left back and centre back. Those are the three areas I'm concerned about when looking at Chelsea's squad and sort of how Chelsea could deal and cope with those injuries. If Edouard Mendy goes down with a serious injury, Kepa Arrizabalaga has to come back in goal. That's going to make a massive difference to Chelsea's defence. I look at, say, Thiago Silva. If he goes down with a long-term injury, if we have to rely on, say, Andreas Christensen for a long period of time, or Rudiger alongside Zuma. Zuma and Rudiger have done decently so far this season, but I'm talking about for a long period of time here. And mostly, I think, drastically alongside Kepa in goal. I'm also looking at left back. If Ben Chilwell goes down with a long-term injury and Emerson, especially Emerson, I don't think Marcus Alonso is getting back to this team at the moment, but especially Emerson and relying on him for more than 1 or 2 games, I think that's a massive concern for Chelsea. I really do. And that's where you start to look at the strength of this squad and key options that can be of great detriment to Chelsea. So I think those are areas that still need improvement potentially for Chelsea in the long term. There are other areas. I think as you get further up the pitch is where Chelsea's strength and depth really shows. I think the options in attacking areas is really exciting for Chelsea and benefits us when we want to rotate those attacking players to still add threat and guile and also effectiveness. That's where you look at for Chelsea's sort of strength. And I think that's where most people divert their eyes to. I think as you go further back in our squad, you see the drop in quality in key positions that can hurt Chelsea like last season. But look at, say, Liverpool at goalkeeper. You know, when Alisson gets injured, Adrian comes in and there's not the same quality there. I don't even think Adrian's playing at the moment. They're going to Kelleher, a young player, in goal rather, because Jurgen Klopp doesn't trust Adrian. So there's an issue there as well. And I always think, you know, how strong can your squad be? We spoke about this with David Alaba, you know, in terms of coming in and being a rotational player. That's not going to happen. So there is a bit of realism there that you are always going to have a drop in quality in some areas. You know, you can never have the perfect squad, basically. You are always going to have that within any squad. Even the best Chelsea squads over the years have had that. I just think that's something to take in mind as we go into a really key period where we could see injuries to key areas. So thinking about, you know, everything's settled, everything's perfect at the moment, it's working well. I think the thing that gives me more sort of hope about, say, injuries or rotation that Lampard has to make is I think there's a more settled system and way of playing this year than there was last season. And so sometimes when you see Frank having to make changes, it isn't too drastic and it isn't too much of a detriment to the way the team plays, especially in the Premier League recently. And I think that could be a key part in Chelsea getting through some fitness issues this season. Let me know your opinions. Do Chelsea have the strongest squad in the Premier League? Let me know in the comments below. But that is it for this episode of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonofChelsea. Have a great day and I'll see you again